Well, hello, my beautiful friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Health Habits and Epic Living podcast. And today I have an exciting guest who is joining us. And her name is Nagina Abdullah. And she is a weight loss coach for women in midlife and the founder of the top rated website, masalabody.com. Nagina has a degree in molecular and cellular biology from UC Berkeley and earned an MBA at NYU, smart cookie. And she's helped more than 1,500 women in midlife successfully lose weight permanently and create a lifestyle change, which is so up my alley. If you know and you've been following, it's all about lifestyle changes and making those habits. And Nagina teaches women how to boost their metabolism naturally to burn fat even when nothing else has worked. She's focused on adding and combining natural, metabolic, and metabolism boosting foods to reduce belly fat and get women unstuck so they can live in their dream body. I love all of this, Nagina, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yes, we are like minded. And so this is going to be a fun episode. To start us off, as I was reading through, your background and all the ways that you help women in midlife, curious to know your thoughts around why midlife? Like, I felt weight loss was not as problematic earlier, but there's something unique about midlife when we hit midlife. And I'm speaking from my journey and seeing when I help clients, there's something nuanced to when we hit midlife. And what do you find with your clients that you help?
Yes. So absolutely, there is absolutely something that changes in midlife. And a lot of times we have the tendency to blame ourselves because in midlife, there are often a lot of things going on in our lives, a lot of stresses that we may be taking on, maybe between children or parents, career, trying to get something going personally. And so a lot of times we'll say, oh, well, it's my fault. I am not working hard enough. I'm not going to the gym enough. I'm not walking enough, or I'm not watching what I eat enough. And sure, there could be some truth in that for sure. You could definitely like work on being more consistent or working on eating healthier, but likely that is not the main thing going on. Even for the healthiest person, many women are facing a lot of struggles as they hit midlife in their 40s and then beyond that in their 50s, 60s and beyond. Some women they start feeling it in their 60s. It depends on you. It depends on your own body. And there's a lot of things that are changing. Now, one, of course, we know our hormones are declining. But why is that affecting us? Why is that affecting our weight specifically? Well, here's a huge reason, and this is a reason that many women may experience a feeling of bloating, and especially a feeling that their stomach belly fat is expanding. And that is because as estrogen, specifically one of our key hormones, declines, estrogen was protecting our body from what's called inflammatory cytokines. So these are molecules that are released that cause inflammation. But with more estrogen in our body, we weren't experiencing the effects of these inflammatory cytokines. But as it's been going down, those cytokines are just out to play. And so that's how we start seeing and feeling this bloating feeling. And though we may be blaming ourselves, it's not our fault because our body has actually changed. We're not being protected as much as we were. So that's one thing that's happening, is that that's declining. Secondly, for many women, our testosterone is declining. And this may be a surprise to some people, but our bodies as women, we produce more testosterone than estrogen. And we produce less testosterone than men. So it's kind of downplayed in the amount of testosterone we need, but we're relying on testosterone, especially for our energy, for building our muscle mass, and a lot of times also to keep our brains clear of brain fog. So we may be experiencing this brain fog, and that's a result of that declining. And thirdly, what else is happening is that naturally our muscle mass is declining with age. So it could be decreasing as much as 1 to 3% a year, just naturally. So what that means is that your body, if you're not doing anything to maintain your muscle, that muscle that you do have is transforming to fat. And instead of having a body that's made up of more muscle, even if you weren't working out, just naturally we have muscle, it's going to become more fatty. And fat doesn't burn as much calories as muscle does. And so that creates our metabolism decline. And so these are three of the key reasons which is why our metabolism is decreasing. It's a hormone change that our inflammation is increasing, our muscle mass is decreasing. And one more piece that I want to explain that is really key is that many women, including myself, will find that they have gotten more insulin resistant. And what that means is that when you eat normal foods that break down to sugar, it doesn't have to be a dessert or a sugary food, it could be anything that's a carbohydrate. When you eat a carbohydrate, it elevates your blood sugar more quickly, and what that means is that insulin is released and it stores that sugar in your blood as fat because your blood sugar is elevated. And this is happening more quickly because your blood sugar is staying more elevated. And so insulin resistance is very common and something that happens as we hit midlife and beyond. And there are natural steps that we can take to bring this down. You don't necessarily have to go on medication if you start this soon enough with food and with building your muscle mass. And we'll talk about some of the ways to alleviate this, but these are the changes that are happening in our body. Our body is actually changing. Our sugar levels are rising, our muscle mass is decreasing, our hormones are decreasing, and we're in a perfect storm of gaining weight, gaining brain fog, and feeling tired and low energy. But there is many ways out of this, and you can actually feel like the best version of yourself when you just know what to do.
Yeah, I loved your explanation, and I love how multifaceted and multi-pronged it is, because I think you're right. We start blaming ourselves. And, when it is so multifaceted, there's going to be numerous ways to resurrect that and change that course. And we can get into that here shortly. But you're right. For a lot of women, the estrogen cliff is a lot of people I've heard talked about it. That estrogen decline can happen slowly, can happen very erratically, and it can happen for some women very quickly. Like they just fell off the cliff, like they felt like overnight. And I've heard this from some of my girlfriends were like, oh my gosh, I just gained this weight literally in the last month. I mean, I wasn't doing anything different. I wasn't exercising different. And all of a sudden, this weight came on. And then some women will be like, oh, it took a couple more months or over the years or over time. And I think it's prudent to know and watch your body because our bodies are all different. Right. And so what's happening for one woman might be similar, but might not be the same timeline for someone. And so that's going to also inform whoever's helping this person or this woman, right, on what the strategies are to kind of get back on course so they don't have to contend with this over time. And another thing you pointed out is like when you get that low energy, that low brain fog, it's kind of like you have the problem, but you don't now have the energy to resource yourself to fix the problem. So a lot of times people will stay in this state of like, yeah, I'll worry about it later. I'll worry about it later. I'll worry about it later. And they keep kicking the can down the road. And unfortunately, you know, a lot of time can go by. I've seen people kick that can down the road for years and finally saying, getting around to it later on. And they're like, oh, and then they learn all the data. If you start earlier, there's more benefit and all of that. And then just so much more if you don't wait and you actually start taking steps to rectify what is going on and make those small changes. So, with that, I'd love to talk a little bit more about metabolism. I feel when I'm working with women, they don't really understand what metabolism is. I think, and some people think it's fixed, like I have a fast metabolism or I have a slow metabolism, or I need to get a genetic test done to find out what type of metabolizer I am. Like, I really feel so many people are really confused about metabolism. So, I'd love for you to give us your definition of metabolism.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. And this is actually a key principle to understand in midlife because if you can just understand this and start addressing your metabolism, which we can increase our metabolism, then that's how you're going to see your weight fall off. It's not going to be from restricting, it's not going to be from eating less calories, from eating lower carbs. In fact, that's going to work against us in midlife. It's the rules are totally different now, but you can still live in the best body that you want to live. You just have to follow the new rules, which are actually more fun. So one of the things, so metabolism is how our body converts energy that comes from food into energy that our body uses. And so it's the ability to do this. So if your body has a low metabolism, then it's not converting the energy from food into energy from our body. For our body, it's actually converting it more into fat. And one of the key indicators of metabolism is how much body fat you have on your body. And so a lot of us are only looking at weight, but what's really important is to understand how much body fat you have and then how much muscle mass you have. Because even if your body fat is a certain number, if your muscle mass is really low, that's going to bring down your metabolism. If you have low muscle, you're going to have lower metabolism. Now, a lot of women, I would say over 70% of women in midlife have a low metabolism specifically because they're under eating. And this is one of the most common things that I see. I have coached over 1,600 women in midlife to lose weight. And that when they come to me, they show me what they're eating and they tell me, I feel like I'm eating too much, but they're actually under eating. But then all of a sudden, they may binge on something that adds up a lot of calories, but doesn't really have any nutrients in it. And so women are under eating the nutrients that we need, and our body is craving nutrients because we need it to detox the food out of our body. Like our liver needs nutrients so that we can detox particles, hormones, foods, and get it out of our body. If we don't, it creates a lot more inflammation. Our gut needs more nutrients so that it can process food and get it out of there. And our immune system, like our thyroid, all of our immune system needs more nutrients so that it can actually work more efficiently. Otherwise, it's not working well, and a lot of food is just staying stuck, and other particles are literally just staying in our body instead of like being processed and moving out. So one of the biggest things that I see is that women are feeling scared about eating. And I understand that. I personally have lost 40 pounds. I lost 40 pounds 12 years ago, and I had struggled with food for my entire life. And I always had cravings for sugar. So I always had to tell myself not to eat that food. But once you get into midlife, it's important to get off of sugar. That is a key important thing to do. But you want to make sure that you're eating enough of the right foods that increase your metabolism. And so foods can actually increase your metabolism without making you gain fat. And once you understand what this is, that's when everything starts to feel easy. The weight starts to fall off. You start to feel more energy. And it's a result of you having a higher metabolism simply by eating more. And then as you eat more, you lose weight. Then you start to actually feel more energy. And then you can start going out and doing some exercise. You don't have to start with exercise because just like you were saying, Sherry, it really is a conundrum that you want to get healthier, but you don't have energy. And so you end up sitting and waiting and hoping or just not taking action really. And you don't have to actually use exercise as your first step. Exercise is not the way that you're going to lose weight. The way that you're going to lose weight is by increasing your metabolism, and you can do that purely through food and eating more of certain foods.
And thank you for saying that because we know and live in the world of GLP-1 agonists, and people are flocking to these medications like Wegovy and Mounjaro and all that. And there's no shame when you need something like that. But when people are hanging around and hearing celebrities on them and reading their stories and they're talking about, oh, these foods just not only quiet the noise and the cravings, they make me eat less. So I think it starts to send that signal out to other women not on these hormones, not on these peptides as they're called. We should be eating less. And that's the whole way. And that's the whole strategy. And that's what's going to help me lose this belly fat. And so I love what you're saying because it's a definitely different approach if you're not on those medications. That, it's looking at the root cause of what's causing that weight gain, which you're talking about this bloating, not getting the right nutrients, things are getting stuck in our bodies, we're not getting detoxified, we're not pooping, we're just keeping it, collecting it, and our cells are getting sluggish. And so if we actually look at changing the root cause of that problem, right, by changing the metabolism, by converting that energy easier and giving our cells enough nutrients, which means we have to eat enough food, we can start to reverse this process, which is for those of us that grew up in the 80s and 90s is all about exercise more, move more, and eat less. And so what you're saying is it's a different strategy now. And I really think a lot of us are still brainwashed from the earlier days, thinking it needs to be less food, or I'm seeing that with my friends on these medications. And why is that not working for me? And I love how you scientifically broke that down and talked about, yeah, we have to be very diligent and vigilant about a nutritious anti inflammatory diet. I love
Mhm,
that.
mhm.
So, talk us through what are some dietary changes you recommend when you are working with clients?
Yes. So, one of the key areas that we start with, so it's really important to not feel that you have to follow a diet or you have to restrict yourself because, in general, that's not going to be sustainable. It's going to be something that you could do for maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, even that's a long time. But then, or maybe you hit a certain number. I used to be able to diet until I lost 10 pounds. And the moment I would hit that number, I would start eating all the foods that got me there and I would gain 12 pounds. And so it wasn't really helpful for me. And I realized I needed a lifestyle change. And so now, what I do is I love what I'm eating every day. I'm never on a diet. I'm always eating the way that I want to, even on my birthday. Like even on my birthday, I'll eat the foods that are healthy because I love them, but I might eat different versions of them that I don't eat every day to change it up. So, one of the key things to start adding, and this is probably something that many women have heard, but I'm going to really give you some more detail around this, is to add more protein. And I have a mantra called protein more, meaning you want to add more protein than you were adding before. And that's going to really help you. But let me put some specifics around this. I'm specifically saying I would advise having 30 grams of protein at every single meal. And starting with breakfast. And this is one of the key areas because breakfast is an area that many women are skipping because they're thinking that it's healthier to eat less. They're thinking that their cousin's sister lost 30 pounds on intermittent fasting. And so they want to skip it. But what happens if you don't get your protein in the morning, it's really hard to catch up throughout the day. So you want to get that 30 grams of protein in the morning, and it's going to get your metabolism high right away in the morning. And the beauty of protein is not only that it increases your metabolism, meaning you're going to burn more fat by adding protein, but that it also reduces your sugar cravings and your hunger cravings. It helps you feel less hungry, and you don't have those almost impossible to fight cravings that you might feel. I was talking earlier about getting off of sugar. The way to get off of sugar is not to eat less sugar. That's actually going to make you want to have more sugar. In fact, that's been proven. And for anyone that's tried to get off sugar, this happened to me as I was trying to diet. When I started taking sugar out, the only thing I was consumed with thinking about was donuts, lattes, ice cream floats, like chocolate cake. That's all I could think about. But when you actually start eating more protein, what's happening is that when your body is having sugar cravings, when you're feeling that, your body is craving a source of quick energy. And it needs a quick fix because you didn't give it enough of what it needs. But what it really was craving is protein. And if you give your body protein proactively, then your body's not craving that quick energy because you have it in the form of protein, which is a slower form of energy. And that's really advantageous to a woman who is working on being healthy and wanting to reduce fat because protein digests much more slowly than sugar does, than carbohydrates does, than a lot of other foods do. And so it's digesting slowly. And so that means that it doesn't elevate your blood sugar. This is really, really key. What's happening in midlife, one of the things I mentioned is that we could be becoming more insulin resistant. And so that means that if your blood sugar is rising, you are storing more fat more quickly. And what protein does is it counteracts your blood sugar rising so quickly. So it keeps your blood sugar very even, and it also helps you stay full for longer because it takes a long time to digest. So you're not craving sugar. And this is why this is a true magical addition to start making. And this is one of the key foods to start eating more of is 30 grams of protein at every meal. And you're going to start feeling less sugar cravings. You're going to have a higher metabolism. And some examples of what that means, I'll give some examples for protein for breakfast, is it doesn't only mean 2 eggs. And 2 eggs, each egg, because 2 eggs is common. Like if someone wants to add protein in their breakfast, they'll have 2 eggs. One egg is only 6 grams of protein. So 2 eggs is 12 grams. If you only have 12 grams of protein and you come up short of that 30 grams, you will feel hungry for carbs or for sugar. And carbs are not bad. I don't want to say that carbs are bad, but you want to eat the right kinds of carbs that are not digesting quickly. And you don't want to only eat carbs, especially by themselves, because they're really going to elevate your blood sugar. So having 2 eggs with a Greek yogurt on the side would be 30 grams of protein and would be amazing. And then also having a half or a cup, half to 1 cup of berries, which are low sugar fruit. And then you could sprinkle some cinnamon on those berries or in that Greek yogurt, because cinnamon also brings your blood sugar down. So what you're doing, this is a perfectly aligned, what I call a fat burning breakfast, because you are having more protein. You're keeping your blood sugar low due to the protein, due to the low sugar fruit, and then also due to the cinnamon. So your blood sugar is staying even, and that means you're not storing fat, but you're getting your metabolism high. So you're actually going to start burning fat very soon. Another example of a breakfast is 2 eggs and a cup of egg whites if you wanted to just make a scramble, and then have some veggies in that scramble, but also have that cup of berries on the side, because those berries, those low sugar fruit or any veggies are very high in fiber. And fiber is also going to keep you full and satisfied. So you're not looking around or feeling cravings for other unhealthier foods that you might be eating more of right now. So we want to transition you to eating more of the right foods that have a lot of nutrients. So those are some breakfast options, but another really great thing to do is to have a protein smoothie, what I call a metabolism boosting morning smoothie. And you have non-dairy milk like almond milk, coconut milk, water, or a liquid that's not milk like water. You also have a protein powder, which you just want to look for a low sugar protein powder, a low fat protein powder. I recommend around 120 to 150 calories for that 25 to 30 grams of protein, which is really efficient. And then you add a cup of strawberries, which I know a lot of people say taste really good in their smoothies. You can also add 2 tablespoons of flaxseed, which give you a lot of fiber and healthy fats. And then if you want, you can add some mint leaves. I love to add these little flavors and spices that also have extra benefits. Like, for example, mint leaves helps you decrease overeating and decrease sugar cravings. And plus, it tastes amazing. And so you blend that into a smoothie, and in 30 seconds, you have your breakfast. It takes you 2 minutes to drink that down, and you're going to feel so satisfied all the way until lunch. And so protein is important, fiber is important. Something that you can do at lunch is just have around 5 ounces of a meat or tofu, or there's some other vegetarian options we can also talk about. But 5 ounces of meat is about from your fingertips to your palm, about a half-inch thick. And you could have salmon, you could have chicken, you could have any other fish, you could have beef, turkey, have a full good piece of that, have an entire cup of vegetables, and then have your carbs at lunch, and have carbs that have more fiber in them, because then they're going to break down more slowly. So things like beans, lentils, Ezekiel bread, sweet potatoes, even potatoes that are cooked and cooled, that when you cook it and then you cool it, that creates a resistant starch, so it doesn't increase your blood sugar. And then you can still warm those potatoes back up in the microwave. That's completely fine. And you can do the same thing with rice. Cook it and cool it, and then it becomes a resistant starch, so it doesn't spike your blood sugar. The way that I'm sharing these foods, it's not random. This is actually a scientific framework that I created when I found that I lost 40 pounds and it felt so easy. And I felt like, oh my gosh, how did I love what I was eating? I felt full and satisfied. I feel like I don't have any cravings, but all of a sudden my weight is going down on the scale. And so I started realizing what foods I was pairing. And so this framework is called the fat burning food framework. And for lunch, it includes a protein, a cup of vegetables, and then a healthy carb. And for breakfast, we already talked about, some examples of that. But it's about not being random with your eating, but being more structured, but not necessarily requiring a strict meal plan that can feel really limiting and restrictive, but more about just understanding these are the foods that I need on my plate, and these are the general amounts that I need on my plate. And once you know that, it becomes really easy to follow a healthy lifestyle, and you're just going to see your fat melt away. You're going to feel your energy rise. And then who knows, you might want to go to the gym. You might want to go on walks. You might want to go on hikes because you have this energy and you're starting to be leaner. So those are a few different foods: protein, fiber, vegetables. Of course, we know that, but healthy carbs, but making sure you're having enough of those things.
Yeah, you highlighted some key things that I really want to make sure our listeners hear is it's not about starving yourself thin or starving yourself healthy, right? It's about getting yourself healthy, and you need the framework, you need the formula to follow so you can make it habitual, right? Once you've learned it, you just do it for a week or two, it starts to become more automatic. And it's like, oh, this is what I have to follow. This is the framework. This is getting enough protein, getting enough. And how do I pair those within a palette that I like, that I can sustain for a lifetime? And I love that because it is about creating healthy habits that set us up for that healthy lifestyle and to really enjoy this body, this vessel that we were given, and bless it in a way that it continues to give us the healthy lifestyle that we want, the functionality that we want, the strength that we want, the way we want to look in our clothes, the way we want to travel with it or play with the grandkids, right? We can set up these systems now so that we can learn to be that way for years and decades to come. Love
Yes,
the framework.
absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, because, when you do something and you call it a diet, I think there's something that the brain will just say, oh, this is short term. Oh, I just need to get 2 weeks in or 3 weeks in, like you were saying, or I need to get to this certain number on the scale. And it's almost like then the brain may or may not be consciously aware that it's thinking this other thought, which is, oh, and then I get to go back to my old ways once I hit that number, once the 3 weeks is done. It was kind of like my mindset around drinking. Oh, I give up alcohol for a month. And then, yeah, then I go back to my own ways, right? Then I'm like cured or the problem magically goes away on its own. And it's like, no, no, you have to set up the habits that support a healthy body. And it's not something you just do short term because then you only get short term results. And then the body goes back to what it was. And oftentimes, like you said, you gain more weight and that becomes more frustrating and just more deleterious to our health.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So taking that metabolic approach is key. Is key. And I think we just have heard so much about exercise more, eat less, and it's not the strategy. So I really want to emphasize that because I don't want anybody's brain to still be confused this far into the podcast episode. That is not what we're saying. That is not advice. It's actually advice that's been proven so many different times over and over to be wrong, to not actually create a healthy life. And so I think now we have so much more research coming out, like you're mentioning the protein and looking at these different diets. Like we never even found one diet that works for everybody, right? That study just does not exist because it's not that structure. It's the wrong structure. We need the right structure or the right formula that you just discussed. And once you follow that formula, it could be the Mediterranean diet. It could be more keto. It could be more plant based for somebody. It could be more vegan for somebody else, right? But just following that framework and that formula is what's most important. And it's not a quote, certain diet.
Mhm.
Yes. And I love how you were talking about building muscle because we know that when, the estrogen declines, like you mentioned, right? It's no longer protecting our midsection. It's no longer protecting our bones, right? So the midsection becomes fuller and more bloated. Our bones can become weaker because estrogen is bone building and bone protective. It's also helping our cognition and our mentation, right? So there's so many benefits of estrogen. And if we choose not to replenish it or replace it with hormone replacement therapy, there are other ways we can still support these different systems within the body.
Mhm.
But it definitely does taking the onus on the individual to get educated to understand how to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What other principles do you find that women need to maybe either relearn or unlearn that helps them be successful on their weight loss journey?
Okay. So what a great question. One of the key things is really to know that eating more is not bad when you're eating the right things. And what's happening in midlife is that our bodies are not as efficient as they were in our 30s and our 20s and before, and especially as children, where we could just process lots of food and get the nutrients out of it. We could eat lots of different things, maybe for some people they could, and we could just get the nutrients out of it, and our bodies were able to perform the way that they needed to. Now we actually need to be intentional about giving our body the right nutrients to just process everything. Because if you're not doing that, then your body is just, it doesn't have the building blocks. It doesn't have the building blocks to detox. It doesn't have the building blocks to have a faster metabolism. It's really in a starvation mode in many ways because it's just waiting for the right nutrients or the right amount of calories in order to be able to continue working in that way. So, knowing that our bodies are not as efficient in midlife is a reason that we should be eating more. And so that's a key, an underlying principle about why things have changed, because we actually do need basic things for our bodies to perform at even a regular level. And so if we're not eating healthy foods that are high in protein, that are high in nutrients, that are high in minerals, that have lots of healthy fats, fiber, then our body is just, it's going to start stalling out. And that's what's called a slow metabolism. And so just having this understanding that there is something that's different, but we do need to eat more is really key. Secondly, getting off of sugar, I feel should be a priority for midlife. And what that means is it doesn't mean not enjoying sugar. I enjoy chocolate cake. I just had some chocolate cake last night because it was my sister-in-law's birthday and I wanted to enjoy the chocolate cake. And it was so good. I had seconds, but that was the one day that I had chocolate cake. I'm not having it regularly and I'm not having sweets because they're not calling my name anymore. But there was a time when they did call my name. So the thing about sugar is that it's not only in sweets. And sugar is actually hidden in lots of food that's considered healthy. And because sugar is a drug, if we give our body sugar, we get cravings for more sugar. We are addicted to sugar. In fact, our gut biome is built around what we're feeding it. And if you're feeding your body foods that seem healthy, but they're actually breaking down to sugar, well, then your gut is going to be growing that bacteria that feeds off of sugar. And that's why you have those cravings. But once you start replacing those foods, and I want to be very intentional about saying replacing and not taking out, because if you simply take foods out, you feel hungry and you don't know what else to do. And over time, you'll just put those foods back in. But if you replace sugary foods with foods that are more nutritious, I mean, this could seem like a very huge contrast to some people, but over time it seems normal. If you started to eat more vegetables, like your body will grow the bacteria that craves vegetables, that's feeding off of vegetables. And this is actually what happened to me and what has happened to so many of my clients is that they get off of sugar because they start adding in protein. They start adding in regular servings of vegetables over the course of the day, and then their body starts craving more of those foods. And so we're not in this battle, this yo-yo dieting battle anymore when we actually make a change in our lifestyle because we've replaced our gut biome. We've replaced the way that we crave foods, and now we're craving healthy foods. And imagine if at night you're craving like a Greek yogurt with berries versus ice cream or peanut butter. I mean, if you're craving a salad with protein, which that's actually what happens, your body starts craving those kinds of foods, then weight loss is a downhill journey. It feels so easy. It feels so freeing because you're eating the foods that you love. And so, just knowing that you can change your cravings is very powerful and it can happen in as quickly as 3 to 5 days. 3 to 5 days when you start taking those foods out and some of those adding in others. And so some of those foods that may feel healthy are things like typical smoothies that maybe you're having a regular smoothie or you're following a recipe that is overdoing on the fruit and underdoing it on the protein or underdoing it on the vegetables. So if you swap that out, that's a big change right there. Another thing is granola bars, granola in general, and protein bars, which a lot of people are adding because they feel like it's healthy. But if you just look at the bag of granola, you'll see how much sugar is in that granola. And you can add a little bit for crunch, but have it with a protein because when you combine your carbs with a protein, then it slows the absorption of sugar and it slows that blood sugar spike. So combining your foods is a really good strategy to still have what you want, but then you can also take the portions down a little bit, but have more of that protein. So those are a few things of really getting off of sugar, prioritizing it, combining your foods, making sure that you're combining any carbs that you're having with a protein or with a healthy fat. So what this means is if you're going to have an apple, Don't ever have an apple alone, or what I say is don't ever have your fruit naked. Have your fruit with a tablespoon of peanut butter or have it with your meal because there is sugar in the fruit, but it's still a good thing to eat. But it is going to spike your blood sugar. There is a significant amount of sugar in an apple or in a pear. And so you might want to have half of that apple, have a small apple, but have it with peanut butter, peanuts, or nuts, almonds. Have it alongside your meal. And then you're going to see your blood sugar will spike almost 50% less than it would have if you've eaten that alone. And what that means is that now you're not gaining fat as much as you were before. In fact, you might be even burning fat. And then, as I said, our bodies are not as efficient as before. So we really do want to give our bodies nutrient dense foods, proteins, fibers, foods like avocados, salmon, fish, chicken, even beef, anything that is fresh that you're making that's not processed because our bodies are not responding to processed foods as quickly and as flexibly as it was before. So it's really about eating those real foods that are going to make the difference.
Yeah, I love all those examples. Just a quick story about the granola. I took my daughter to the grocery store and we were shopping for Greek yogurts, and some of them we pulled out and they have like 11 grams of sugar in even a Greek yogurt because they're sweetened with the strawberries on the bottom or the blueberries or whatever funky flavors they come in. And then in the granola aisle, we were shopping and there was literally maybe I would say 15 choices of granola and some of them keto friendly and, all the advertisements on front. But when you turn it around, a lot of them still had a good amount of sugar, 8 grams per serving, 9 grams per serving. And if you're having a serving size and plus you got to calculate still lunch and dinner, my daughter and I were like, we're not buying that. That's not going to give us the less sugar that we are aiming for, our daily amount of sugar that we have calculated for us that we like to abide by. And so, yeah, just being smart because you just think, oh, picking up some Greek yogurt. But if you don't turn the back and read the labels, we got to make sure that we're actually doing the math and calculating how much protein, how much sugar, how much carbs we are getting because our bodies are going to respond differently. And once you realize it's just a formula game, like I like math, right? So it's just a math game. Like if you could just get your players that are in this category to choose from. You do the math once and you get your players in these different categories, and then you don't have to think about it again. So you have to think about it like right when you're making the changes or when you're making the adjustments or educating yourself about, hey, this is the amount of protein I want per meal or sugar I want per meal. And then once you have your players, you keep just switching it up, and then you don't have to make the mental math game all the time. So I love how you gave us the formula to follow.
Thank you. And that's such a good point. It takes some effort in the beginning to make a lifestyle change. And that's
Yes.
where it is really important if you have support or if you have guidance on how to make those changes, because it can feel like a lot. But actually, if you just had someone telling you what to do and exactly how to go about it feels very doable and you feel more reassured that you know you're making the right choices. Then once you set that lifestyle up, like the Greek yogurt brand to buy, it's as easy as that. You have 2 or 3 breakfast options. You have some go-to lunches. You know what to eat when you're at home for dinner or when you go out, because this is also about a lifestyle. It's not only about cooking your own food, but when you're out, what choices do you make? And also, where can you indulge and where can you not? Because we all want those indulgences, especially if you go to a restaurant and it's a new restaurant and you want to try the chef's best dish, but you may not want to hold back on that. And that's okay. There's just ways that you can balance out. Maybe you have a lighter appetizer, or maybe you split dessert that day. And instead of saying no to yourself, instead of saying no, how about say yes, but let me make the healthy choice? And then you work that into that. And so once you set up this lifestyle and you start knowing the choices to make, it's very empowering because you're educating yourself. You're not following a mindless diet that you don't understand just to lose weight and you know that you can't do this for the rest of your life. And so that's why, like, if you take the time to set up these habits along the way, meaning you know what to choose at the grocery store, you know how to have a structured day versus just waking up and wondering what you're going to eat that day, then that becomes a part of your life. And then your body, as you lose weight, you start learning these habits, and then you're able to keep these habits going because it's a lifestyle and it's no longer a fad. It's no longer a trend. It's no longer a diet. It's who you are. And that feels really freeing when you get to that point. And it's very possible for everyone to do that if you want that for yourself.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And then it just becomes automatic that you don't even think about it. And like you said, it's just your new lifestyle. Well, it's been great having you on the podcast, Nagina. And so thank you for coming on. And any additional information, or where can my listeners find you to learn more about you?
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you, Sherry, for having me on. And your questions were so natural. This conversation was so amazing. And it really helped to uncover a lot of topics that are not really talked about, especially why things are different in midlife, which is just not brought up. Like, we're in a different stage right now. But we just got to skim the surface. And so, what I'd love to do is, I'd love to offer a more personalized approach on a metabolism boosting discovery call for your listeners to get personalized input and strategy on how to finally get unstuck, transform your body, and shrink your belly fat naturally and sustainably. And so on this call, we'll talk about your goals, we'll talk about challenges, and we'll talk about simple steps that you can take as soon as we get off the call. And so you can book that call by going to masalabody.com/apply. It'll be a way that we can just get to know each other and that you can start moving down that healthier route. And then in addition to that, I have a free gift. It's a sweet spice cheat sheet. And this is a cheat sheet where I share a sweet spice that's likely in your kitchen cabinet right now that is going to bring down your blood sugar and help you get off of sugar just by sprinkling it onto some things on your breakfast. And so in the cheat sheet, I share 3 health benefits of the spice, 5 easy no-cook ways to use it in your day. And the best part is that I share a fat-burning fire tea that fires away belly fat and is really easy to make. And in fact, if any of you are looking for an alternative to wine or to alcohol, it's a great and much healthier drink to have at night than that. And so you can get that by going to my Instagram, which is at Masala Body, and just DMing me the word sweet. And then I'll send that to you right away in the DM. So masalabody.com on Instagram or Masala Body on Instagram. And then you can just DM the word sweet. And after that, I'll make sure that you're on my email list and I can send you recipes, strategies, and any events that I have as well coming up.
That's so awesome, Nagina. Thank you so much for offering that. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sherry. It's been such a pleasure.
All right, ladies. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Health Habits and Epic Living podcast, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Health Habits and Epic Living podcast. If you're ready to take the next step to improve your health, wellness, and lifestyle goals, head over to www.epicyou.com and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Again, that's EPICYOU.com. Please note that the information in this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice.